What happens when a controversial comedian meets an equally uncompromising television host in a battle of wits that spirals completely out of control? You won't believe what unfolds when Russell Brand's appearance on This Morning transforms from celebrity chat into an all-out war of words with Ruth Langsford that leaves the entire studio in stunned silence. Before we get into this incredible story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below because you're not going to believe what unfolds. Last night's episode of This Morning delivered television gold when what should have been a straightforward celebrity interview exploded into one of the most heated confrontations ever witnessed on daytime television. The tension was palpable from the moment Russell Brand walked onto the set, his trademark swagger immediately clashing with Ruth Langsford's steely professional demeanor. The atmosphere in the studio was electric. As Brand settled into his chair, that familiar mischievous glint in his eyes already suggesting trouble was brewing. Ruth, ever the seasoned broadcaster, maintained her composed exterior, but those who know her well could detect the subtle tightening around her eyes that always preceded her most combative moments. "Russell, welcome back to This Morning," Ruth began, her voice carrying just the slightest edge that viewers at home might have missed, but Brand certainly didn't. "I have to ask you about your recent comments regarding mainstream media manipulation. Some would say you're biting the hand that feeds you." Brand's response came with his characteristic theatrical flair, but there was something sharper underneath. "Ruth, darling, the hand that feeds also has the power to choke, doesn't it? I'm simply asking questions that perhaps make certain people uncomfortable." His eyes narrowed slightly as he leaned forward. "Including, dare I say, certain television personalities who've built careers on maintaining the status quo." The first shot had been fired, and Ruth's professional mask slipped just enough to reveal the steel beneath. "That's quite an accusation, Russell. Are you suggesting that experienced journalists like myself are somehow complicit in this alleged manipulation?" "I'm not suggesting anything, Ruth," Brand replied, his voice dripping with mock innocence. "I'm stating it outright. The comfortable middle-class morality you peddle on shows like this is exactly what keeps people docile and unquestioning." The temperature in the studio seemed to rise several degrees as Ruth's composure began to crack. Comfortable middle-class morality? That's rich coming from someone who's made millions playing the reformed bad boy for audiences who eat up your pseudo-intellectual rebellion. Brand's laugh was sharp and humorless. "At least I don't pretend to be something I'm not, sweetheart. You sit there in your designer clothes, asking softball questions and calling it journalism, while the world burns around us." "Don't you dare sweetheart me," Ruth snapped, her professional veneer finally beginning to crumble. "You waltz in here with your superior attitude, lecturing everyone about authenticity, while you've spent decades crafting the most calculated persona in show business." The confrontation was escalating rapidly, and Brand seemed to relish every moment. "Calculated? That's brilliant, coming from someone who's turned agreeable blandness into an art form. Tell me, Ruth, when did you last ask a question that actually challenged anyone who mattered?" Ruth's eyes flashed dangerously. "I've been asking challenging questions since before you figured out that controversy sells books, Russell. The difference is I do it with integrity rather than cheap shock tactics." "Integrity?" Brand's voice rose, his theatrical control slipping. "You want to talk about integrity? How about we discuss the cozy relationships between this network and the pharmaceutical companies whose products you promote during your health segments?" The accusation hung in the air like a lit fuse. Ruth's face had gone pale, then flushed red with anger. "How dare you suggest that I would compromise my journalistic ethics for corporate interests? You know nothing about how this industry works." "Oh, I know exactly how it works," Brand shot back, his voice gaining intensity. "Comfortable compliance disguised as professional competence. You've spent so long being the acceptable face of establishment media that you've forgotten what real questioning looks like." Ruth was fully engaged now, all pretense of professional courtesy abandoned. "Real questioning? You mean the kind where you ramble incoherently about conspiracies while your audience nods along because they think pseudo-spiritual nonsense makes them enlightened? Better than spoon-feeding comfortable lies to housewives who mistake your morning chat show wisdom for actual insight," Brand retorted, his words cutting through the studio like a blade. The personal nature of the attacks was unprecedented for daytime television. Ruth's voice was shaking with controlled fury as she responded. You arrogant, self-aggrandizing fraud. You've built an entire career on convincing people that your narcissistic ramblings represent some kind of profound truth, and you've built yours on being the perfect establishment lapdog? Brand fired back immediately. At least my audiences choose to seek out challenging ideas rather than having their daily dose of acceptable opinions delivered with their morning coffee. The studio crew were exchanging worried glances as the confrontation reached a fever pitch. Ruth was leaning forward in her chair, her professionalism completely abandoned. Challenging ideas? Is that what you call promoting dangerous conspiracy theories to vulnerable people looking for someone to blame for their problems? Brand's response was venomous. Vulnerable people? You mean people who haven't been lobotomized by decades of morning television? People who can still think critically about the information they're fed? Critical thinking? Ruth's laugh was harsh and bitter. You wouldn't recognize critical thinking if it came with a self-help manual and a meditation retreat. You're nothing but a charlatan in spiritual guru's clothing. Better a charlatan who asks difficult questions than a complicit mouthpiece for corporate interests. Brand snarled, his composure finally cracking completely. At least I don't insult my audience's intelligence by pretending that celebrity gossip and lifestyle tips constitute meaningful journalism. Ruth stood up from her chair, her face flushed with rage. That's it. I've had enough of your condescending, holier-than-thou attitude. You come on our show and attack everything we stand for, while contributing absolutely nothing constructive to any conversation. Brand rose to meet her challenge, his voice rising to match hers. What you stand for? Mediocrity? Comfortable compliance? The systematic dumbing down of public discourse? We stand for treating our guests and our audience with respect, Ruth shouted back. Something you clearly know nothing about, you self-obsessed, pseudo-intellectual fraud. The final exchange was explosive. Brand's face was contorted with anger as he pointed an accusing finger at Ruth. Respect? You want respect? Try respecting your audience enough to challenge them, instead of treating them like children who need to be protected from difficult ideas. Ruth's response was immediate and furious. Get out! Get out of my studio right now! I will not sit here and be lectured by someone who mistakes arrogance for intelligence and controversy for insight. The words hung in the air for a moment before Brand laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that echoed through the stunned studio. Gladly, he said, ripping off his microphone and throwing it onto his chair. I wouldn't want to contaminate your safe space with any actual thoughts. With that devastating parting shot, Russell Brand stormed off the This Morning set, leaving Ruth Langsford standing alone, shaking with rage while the cameras continued to roll and capture every second of the most explosive daytime television confrontation in recent memory.